Today, I am joined by Grant Stinchfield to go through some of the biggest stories in the news. Grant, thank you for coming on again.
Stephen, I always love coming on with you. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, absolutely. I appreciate you accepting. All right. Biden comes out of the basement, decides he's going to make his first big appearance with the lovely ladies over on The View. He tells them he's not at all shocked that Trump beat Kamala Harris because Americans are sexist, but that if he had continued running, he would have definitely beat Donald Trump. I don't believe this for a minute. What are your thoughts?
Well, there's no way he would have beaten Donald Trump, and I don't think any of the Democrats would have. Nobody stood a chance. People were fed up. They went so far left, so far radical. And who was leading that charge? Of course, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. But I would say that Joe Biden, Stephen, probably is so angry at Kamala Harris for basically nudging him out that I'm sure there is bad blood there. The only question now is Kamala Harris going to run for governor in California, or is she going to try to run for the presidency again? And I think it might be the presidency again.
Wow. Well, they brought up over on The View, they said, we asked Kamala Harris if she would do anything differently, and she said no. And I think that actually made her lose the election. And Biden was like, I didn't tell her what to say. She could have said whatever she wanted. But I think you're right. People were sick of the high prices, being gaslit that inflation wasn't real, that they weren't doing all this stuff at the border, that they weren't giving illegal immigrants more money and assistance than veterans and senior citizens. I just think they were going to lose no matter what. And the proof is, other than Kamala Harris, the top 6 most popular Democrats, every one of them said, I don't want to run for president.
Right. Well, because they had destroyed their party and destroyed their messaging, whatever messaging they had. And then, Joe Biden, it's interesting saying, well, I didn't tell her to do this. I actually believe him. I believe that Joe Biden didn't tell anybody to do anything. I think it was Joe Biden's handlers around him saying, hey, you stick on board with the president's messaging. You stick on board with Biden's open border policies. You stick on board. I promise you she was mandated not to turn on him. And I'm sure Biden had nothing to do with that because he was asleep at the wheel. It was his handlers that were calling all the shots.
Yeah. She's like, well, I guess if I mess up too bad, he'll give me an auto pen pardon.
Exactly.
What is going on with those? Do you think that's going to end up at the Supreme Court, or do you think they're going to say, hey, other presidents used an auto pen, we're just going to let it go?
Well, I've tried to break this down in a nonpartisan manner. Other presidents have clearly used auto pens. The question becomes, and I think this is going to be key, did Joe Biden know what the auto pen was being used for? I don't like the idea of an auto pen. I think there's a reason why you put your wet signature on paper, and the reason is so there's not fraud like this. But if you're going to use it and Joe Biden knew it was being used, then I think you're going to have a hard time overturning the use of the auto pen because of the history of it. I think it may actually be easy to prove that Joe Biden didn't know what it was being used for. Think about all the pardons he said he wasn't going to offer up, and then out of the blue, they come out. Remember that soundbite from Speaker Johnson talking about liquefied natural gas and Biden shutting down the liquefied natural gas port? And Speaker Johnson, he's one-on-one with Biden and says, sir, you shut down the liquefied natural gas port. And Biden says, no, I didn't. It was a study on liquefied natural gas. And he says, no, it was an executive order to shut it down. Those kinds of things are proof that Biden did not understand what he was signing or being told what the auto pen was signing. He wasn't being told the whole story.
Yeah. Well, I hope they get to the bottom of that. There's a few people that received auto pen pardons that I would like to have that reversed and a real investigation. We'll see where that ends up going. What are your thoughts? One, I guess, complaint or grumble coming out of Republican voters is they feel like Trump is doing everything he said he was going to do, like keeping campaign promises like we've never seen before. But then you have Republicans in Congress, they're not codifying or putting his stuff into law. What are your thoughts on that? Are they waiting to get closer to the election, or do they publicly say they support Trump, but privately they don't?
I think they just suck, and they work at a snail's pace. And this has been Congress's problem all the time. They cannot get on board with operating at the speed of Trump. So look at the first executive order that they codify into, well, at least passing the House, now onto the Senate, is the Gulf of America. It's an easy one. It's a no-brainer. What Republican's going to vote against? I can't even believe every Democrat voted against making the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America. Every Democrat voted no on that. Like, why is this even a partisan issue? But we are where we are. But that's the first executive order they are trying to codify into law. But we need a lot of them. We need the border issues codified into law. You go across the whole board of what he has done here. We've got to make sure this happens, and we got to make sure it happens fast, because another president is going to overturn everything that he's working on.
Yeah. I guess I just don't understand that one that you just brought up. Like, if a Democrat man can identify as a woman, why can't the Gulf of Mexico identify as the Gulf of America? Like, it's an easy one. Just get this thing done.
It's exactly right. You know, the other interesting one is he's thinking about changing the Persian Gulf to the Gulf of Arabia. So this is interesting because my Iranian friends, who all love freedom, who people who immigrated from Iran to the United States, real freedom lovers and real supporters of Trump, they do not like this idea. And in fact, if you ask them, what are you, when someone says, well, I'm Russian, or I say I'm half Italian, they'll say they're Persian. They don't want to admit to being Iranian. So the Gulf of Arabia, or whatever he's going to call it, this one's a little puzzling. So I'm still waiting to hear real details on why he wants to change the name of that body of water.
What, speaking of Arabia, Saudi Arabia, what do you think Trump is hoping to accomplish there? I think it might just be strengthening our relationship, more security guarantees, asking to pump more oil, asking to keep the petrodollar, the world reserve currency. And any thoughts on that? Because when Biden went, they hated Biden. They fist bumped. They gave him no attention. They seem to like Donald Trump.
They do. I really don't trust Saudi Arabia. I don't trust many of the countries over there. I guess in the end, if you're a nation, any sovereign nation, you got to look out for yourself first. But I don't put a lot of faith in Saudi Arabia. But I think everything you mentioned is most certainly on the table. But President Trump declared he had this big announcement. It's going to be the biggest announcement ever, history making, the greatest announcement in years. I assume it has to do with the Middle East. I assume it has to do with that trip going over there. Maybe they've reached a deal where they can verify that Iran is doing away with its nuclear arms program. That would be a huge announcement. That would really solidify at least a little bit more safety and security in that region. But it has to be verifiable, which it never has been. We know Iran's been making nuclear weapons, they've never stopped. That would be a big announcement. I don't know what it is, though. Everybody's guessing.
Well, we got a new pope, so it's not that.
Yeah.
Even though, my gosh, the internet went crazy. And then Trump comes out. He's like, I didn't make this AI image. You think Trump, is getting on Mid-Journey and typing in the very unique, specific code in order to get the exact image that he wants? Yeah. So earlier this week, Chucky Schumer from New York said, Donald Trump's days of pretending to be a populist are over. His policies are nothing short of an all-out assault on hardworking Americans. I think it's completely the opposite of what Chuck Schumer is saying. I think he's doing so much for the middle class and trying to bring back jobs and get inflation down. It's got Wall Street mad. So how is he not working for the middle class, hardworking American? Is this Chuck Schumer doing what he does best, which is spreading lies?
Yeah, and being a hypocrite, because everything he describes is really what the Democrats have been up to. When you think about President Trump and his quest to bring manufacturing back, you can disagree or agree with the tariff program, okay? But what you can't disagree with is President Trump's goal. His goal is to bring jobs back to America. If you don't think it's going to work, then fine. We can have that argument of why I think it actually will work and why I'm giving him putting great faith in President Trump to make that happen. But his goal is to bring back American manufacturing jobs. That was never the goal of the Democrats. His goal is to make America safe again, which all we want is to be able to go to and from work in a safe manner, make sure we can eat outside at a nice cafe and not get held up. If you're in Los Angeles, forget about it. All of these things are about everyday folks. And the Democrats turn their backs on everyday folks. Just look at it. They're still defending MS-13 gang members and Tren de Aragua gang members. Like, what planet do they live on? Stephen, I don't understand it. And they still double down on the deportation when you have 70% of America saying they support the deportation of illegal aliens, not just violent ones either, all illegal aliens. And the Democrats are out to lunch on these topics.
Yeah. I mean, they really hate when their future voters get deported. I mean, it just really burns them up inside. Jamie Raskins, one of my least favorite people in the Democrat Party, said on CNN that President Trump sees the Constitution as inconvenient furniture that's got to be kicked out of the way. Why are Democrats putting forward this talking point? Now we're having constitutional crisis. He's against the Constitution. He doesn't understand the Constitution. I guess democracy's on the ballot's no longer on the ballot. Now it's about the Constitution. Why is this the big talking point right now?
Again, I go back to hypocrisy. We could do podcast after podcast on Democrat hypocrisy. Every move they make seems to be unconstitutional, seems to fly in the face of what freedom is all about, whether it's their tyrannical mandates, whether about letting criminals free, whether it's about ignoring the rule of law. This is what the Democrats are doing. President Trump and Elon Musk, think about this, are trying to limit the size of government. What did our founding fathers want? A limited government. Now our government's huge, so they're still doing their best to try to pare out what they can pare out. But how is that unconstitutional? How is it unconstitutional to get back to the business, back to the basics of what America was built on? Free speech, strong defense, all things that apparently Democrats don't want. They hate the idea of free speech because they're afraid of the truth. And quite frankly, Stephen, I think the Democrats are most afraid of the Constitution. They hate it because it put guardrails on their overreach.
Yeah. Okay. So Joe Scarborough over on MSNBC, he said, it's not fair to compare deportation of Trump to Biden or to Obama or Clinton, even though they deported way more people than Donald Trump ever did. But he said that it was okay for them to deport because the border was still open. But now that the border is secured, Trump doesn't have the right to kick these people out of the country. I can't even understand his logic. Why would people keep watching his show?
Think about it. Remember the pictures of hundreds of people flooding the border a day? You had areas where there was 10,000 people coming across the border a day. And now consider what these radical leftist judges want. They want us to deport each one of these illegals one by one. So you have 10,000 come across in a few hours, and now we got to deport them one by one, going back to their home country. Look, where's Joe Scarborough is coming from? I guess they're doing anything they can to try to make an argument for themselves, even if the argument makes no sense, which apparently doesn't.
No, it doesn't to me, and I think it's just so wrong to. I have noticed that the Democrats are completely silent on the border. So I really do think plan B is now keep as many future voters in the country as we can, even if it means bankrupting the taxpayers in order to continue to fund their lifestyle. I think it's so weird when they're like, I can't believe Trump would offer to pay for an airplane ticket to get them out of here. Well, why weren't you guys complaining when 500,000 people were flown in the middle of the night on taxpayer money? It's like you said, it's just pure hypocrisy.
Well, let me tell you something. It would be so much cheaper to give every one of them a first-class plane ticket home than it would to pay for them having babies here, to pay for their health care here. Many of the blue cities pay for their housing. They give them debit cards. You take all of this, you add it up, you can give them a first-class plane ticket home, and you would save money doing that.
Yeah. Well, let me just break the math down because I love where you're going with that, Grant. $700 a night hotels in New York for illegal immigrants times 30. That's $21,000 a month just in hotel rooms, right? Most Americans don't make $21,000 a month, let alone have a mortgage or something like that. They could
And
literally
that's one hotel room.
Yeah, they could literally fly on the Bernie Sanders AOC private jet for cheaper than $21,000.
Did you see Bernie Sanders talking about how he's got to have a private jet because that's how campaigns are and it's not changing?
He literally said, "What you think I'm going to stand in line to fly? No, I can't have people waiting on me."
Oh gosh!
And then I saw Jasmine Crockett. She literally went in front of people in wheelchairs onto the airplane before them. Like literally people in wheelchairs who have the first right to go on. She goes, you know what? I'm a sitting member of Congress. I'm more important than everybody. I'm going to go in front of the wheelchair people.
Yeah.
Yeah. And didn't she get in trouble for calling the governor of Texas Hot Wheels for being in a wheelchair? What does she have against people in wheelchairs?
She hates people in wheelchairs. That's Jasmine Crockett. She hates everybody unless you're trans. Or a minority, I guess. So this is what Jasmine Crockett did. She did call Governor Abbott Hot Wheels, who is, of course, Governor Abbott. He's a great governor of Texas. And, he's in a wheelchair here. He had a tree fall on him when he was jogging, if you can imagine, and paralyzed from the waist down. But, yeah, that's Jasmine Crockett. She doesn't care about anybody in a wheelchair.
All right, final question. I think this is wonderful. I think you might as well. But the FBI is officially criminally investigating Letitia James for the exact crimes that she accused Trump of. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, again, the theme of this, it's funny how we were talking, and the theme of this little interview is hypocrisy. Everything she went after President Trump on, I think she's done worse because I don't even think they were crimes what she went after President Trump on. And now you're thinking about the mortgage fraud that she committed. She said she married her father. Her father was her husband, like flat out, so she could get a decent loan and a decent interest rate on that. I think you're just going to go far and wide the crimes Letitia James may have committed. And I'm glad the FBI is getting in on it, not just a state investigation.
Yeah, I agree. When I saw that it was the FBI, the Albany office was going after her, I was like, okay, this actually has some teeth. It's not just like, somebody that offices next to Alvin Bragg or something. Like, it's the FBI, their crime division, their accounting forensic. They're going to dig in. I mean, Sam Antar has already done a lot of the heavy lifting for him.
He's great, by the way, and that's the former CEO or CFO of Crazy Eddie's, right? Is that was a for anybody that doesn't remember? Do you remember Crazy Eddie's? Did you grow up in New York? So Crazy Eddie's was the Best Buy of New York, New Jersey, Connecticut before there were massive chains. It was called Crazy Eddie's, and the Crazy Eddie would get on and says, "Our prices are insane." Well, Crazy Eddie and Sam Antar all went to prison for white-collar fraud. I think it was income tax evasion and all that stuff. So if anybody knows how to hide the money, Sam does. And I've talked to him at length about this, and his investigation is nailed tight, and I know he's handed that off to the FBI as well. The only challenge is going to be, Stephen, does Kash Patel have agents in Albany in New York that are willing to do the real work to go after Tish James? Or are there these holdover deep staters that hate everything about the Republican Party, hate everything about President Trump, hate everything about Kash Patel, their director? Will they do the actual work? I think he can find certainly some in the FBI that can, but it'll be interesting to see how these investigations play out.
Yeah, and I think this might be one where they try to keep at arm's length because they don't want it to look like this is a political revenge job or something like that. But I bet they won't be able to close this case without somebody above them saying, hey, why aren't you bringing charges? You better prove that to your upline. We'll see. I'm hopeful, but we'll see.
Look, she's just one of many that we want retribution for. I mean, Letitia James, from Fauci to the Secretary of Defense under Joe Biden, to all of these people that were involved in so many things, the Attorney General under Joe Biden, Merrick Garland, all these people, we want retribution. So start someplace. We got to start to see something happen. It's early, but we need to start seeing something happen.
Yeah, I'm hoping we see some of that in the next 100 days. The first 100, awesome, great start. Let's see what happens in the next 100. Grant, I know we're up against a wall. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to come on. If people want to follow you, how do they catch you online?
Yeah, you're awesome, Stephen. Thank you. So Stinchfield 1776 on just about every social media platform. On YouTube, just type in Grant Stinchfield, and then GrantStinchfield.com will really take you everywhere. But Stinchfield 1776 on all the social media platforms. And don't forget the Real America's Voice show, too, 7 p.m. Eastern time, every night on Real America's Voice, which is a great network. If you don't know it, follow it. Steve Bannon, me, Charlie Kirk, the gang. It's great stuff. Stephen, I appreciate you giving me that opportunity to plug myself.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'll get those links down below. Thanks for coming on. Have a great rest of your day.
You too, my man.